Hey everybody, good afternoon. Lieutenant Joe here, your host for Hope is Not a Tactic, the school safety and security show. So today we're going to start a series of episodes where I'm going to try and help everybody understand the basics of de-escalation training. Now, de-escalation training is something that every person should have in their personal life and their work life, or in any other organization that they belong to, religious facilities, businesses, schools, everywhere. De-escalation techniques help us when we see a situation start to maybe deteriorate and there could be violence. Somebody is upset. Somebody's having a hard day. Somebody's having some kind of a problem. They're physically upset. They're not sure what to do, or maybe they're angry, whatever, and they start to devolve towards violence. Well, when we see that coming, there are specific things that we can do. Now, I am an FBI trained hostage crisis negotiator. I did that for many, many years in my police career. Anything I tell you does not make you a hostage crisis negotiator, nor does it say, well, you've watched this, you've learned about this, you have got to do something if somebody starts to react or act out in a way that could be potentially dangerous. You don't have to do that. Matter of fact, one of the things we talk about is one of the smartest things we can do sometimes is to not engage somebody like that. What I have found, though, and the reason that I create this course for schools, it's called Crisis in the Classroom. It's about a 2.5 hour program that I do for teachers, custodians, administrators, for everybody, so that we learn how to de-escalate someone who could potentially be dangerous. And you never know, you might have to react with somebody, right? You might have to deal with them if you're stuck in that office and they come in, if they're outside with the children, if you're in your personal life, you could be on life, you train somewhere and somebody starts to go off and your family's there, what are you going to do? So I want to give you some tips and some understanding of some things that you can do if you have to, right? So let's keep that in mind. So first of all, I want to cover our sponsors here. RiotTint.com. They make window safety film for your doors and windows to keep bad people out when they want to try and hurt you. Amazing product. They have all different kinds of things. Go talk to Dan and his team. Amazing. Also, Blue 360 Media. They're my publisher. They publish all my books, and they're going to be putting our training out pretty soon as well. And then there's medicalessentialdiagnostics.com. Medicalessentialdiagnostics.com. They are a company in New Jersey right now. They have, I believe, 6 offices now where you can get a health screening for you and 2 adult members of your family at no cost to you if you worked in the capacity of a state worker, county worker, municipal worker, first responders, that kind of thing. You call them up, you make an appointment, find out if there's something wrong so you can enjoy your life and then get your pension and enjoy that. So medicalessentialdiagnostics.com, riottint.com, blue360media.com. We thank them because without them, we couldn't bring this to you. All right, so I'm trying to decide if we should do this in multiple episodes or if I should just really cut to the chase and give you the techniques right off the bat. But it's always important to have some background in this to understand the concepts, right? So we'll probably do it in multiple episodes. This one will be to get you started, to give you some idea of what we're talking about, and then we'll work our way through. It'd probably be 2 episodes, maybe 3. All right, let's take a look. So first of all, the concept of, what is a crisis? The key is to understand what a crisis is so that when you see a potential person in crisis, you can identify it and realize that it's not just a person having a bad day. All right. So this is really where the problem comes in. We see somebody and they're having a bad day and we deal with them in a certain way. Well, if that person is really not just having a bad day, but they are having some kind of crisis, the things that you say and do with them will not work for a person who's in crisis as though someone's having a bad day. So let's look at this example. I'm normally an easygoing, fun kind of guy. I work with you and I come into work one day and you can see that there's something up. I'm not my same bubbly, happy Lieutenant Joe kind of a self. I'm quiet. I seem something's bothering me. And then you say something and I snap at you. Whoa. Now, our first reaction when we see that is to go, wow, what's up with Joe? Something's wrong here. But many of us would then say something back. Hey, what's your problem? Well, if I'm just having a bad day and I snap, and that's not my normal way of interacting with people, I would probably recognize that and say, hey, yeah, sorry, I'm just having a bad day. I got something going on, something on my mind. I didn't mean to snap at you. Yeah, yeah, no problem, man. That's not like you. I know. Sorry about that. A person who's in crisis, they do not react the same way as a person just having a bad day. Person in crisis is more involved in what's going on. They are more distracted by it. They are more controlled by it. So if you were to think about this. Think about your significant other in your life. Say you and your significant other are having an argument, and the argument starts to get a little heated, which it does in relationships. These things happen, right? And then you turn around and say, "Hey, calm down." How well does that work when you say that? It doesn't work very well because even a small crisis, right? A small crisis like an argument with a significant other where it starts to get heated, people are upset, now they're defensive, they're saying things. When you say calm down, that is called an action imperative. You're telling somebody to do something. And when I'm just having a bad day, I might hear that and go, oh, sorry. But if I'm in a crisis, I'm upset. I got my back against the wall. I'm feeling defensive, as in an argument kind of a thing. We all know that saying calm down doesn't calm anything down. It amps things right up, doesn't it? Yes, it does. And I know everybody's out there saying, yeah, that's true, right? So the whole idea is we want to identify, is this a crisis or is a person having a bad day? All right. Then we have to understand, where do crises come from and how do we define a crisis? So a crisis is defined in a couple of unique ways. When you look it up in the dictionary, you'll see that it'll say something like a crisis is a point of serious activity taking place in a person's life, a time of change, a time of danger, a time of concern, right? A turning point in somebody's life, or a time when consequences are feared or concerned. So when we look at those, looking at them in context helps us to understand. So when we think of young people in our schools and we say, okay, what does that mean? How do those couple of things fit into them? Well, a turning point in somebody's life. We know when kids go from being little kids right up to fifth grade or sixth grade, then they start to become young adults. And we know everybody goes through puberty, and suddenly we see the world differently, don't we? Right? That's a reality of human growth. And as school personnel, you know that. You see them go through this. The director of school safety and security, I saw this process as well. And raising my own kids, I saw it. So when you see these kids start to now see each other differently than just, Mary and Bobby and Tina, now they start to see each other maybe as romantic interests, or they like that person, or there's interest in them that they didn't have before. And now you have my girlfriend, Mary. Mary's my girlfriend. It's so wonderful. And then Mary doesn't like me. Now she likes Bobby. Well, that betrayal can be very powerful to a young person. Like, oh, what's going on here, right? You have all these feelings. So a turning point in somebody's life. Young people today are confused by lots of things, trying to find their place in the world. Who are they? What is their identity? Right? We know that that's a huge topic in schools, and we know that people talking about this all the time. But I can imagine a young person who's confused on who they are, how they fit in, where do they fit in. That could be a turning point. Maybe they decide to announce who they believe they are. And that can be met with approval, or can be met with disapproval at home and in school. It can cause all kinds of problems. Say a kid gets themselves in trouble and they're facing consequences because they're involved with the law. And now they're about to be punished, or they have a court date or something's coming up. At that moment, all of this stuff starts to build. You see what's happening here with all of these different examples? What if there's something going on at home, right? We all think we know a lot about our coworkers and the kids that are around us, but we don't always know everything. And there can be a lot of things going on in people's lives that we're not familiar with. And those things can be building up on them, causing tension, stress. So that list is important of what can create a crisis, right? So crisis is not a regular time. It's not a regular thinking. It's not a regular emotional time. And it can be set off into crisis. These things that are going on. So what we call that is the trigger event. There's something that happens that sets the person off. Now, the reality is it can be something based on reality, or it can be based on their perception of reality, right? Oh, so Mary's now with Bob. Bob, betrayed me. Mary, did this to me wrong. And maybe that's what happened. Maybe that's not what happened, but that's how I feel, right? I think everyone's talking about me. I think everyone doesn't like me. Whatever it is, maybe that's real, maybe it's not. So the trigger event is the thing that sets the person off into crisis. And it can be something real, something imagined. It could be something going on at home, something totally unrelated to their relationship or interaction with you and the school, but something there sets them off. So here's a perfect example. I do a lot of work with a lot of school districts, and I teach this kind of a course to every staff member. And I was talking to a security officers group from a large district in New Jersey. And in this district, they have some problems in their district. So they have set up metal detectors and they have bag searches every day. When you come in, you're carrying a bag, it's going to get searched. You go through a metal detector. And the security officer was telling me that this one young lady, she was a sophomore, I think, or a freshman, 16 years old. This girl, good student, nice girl, very smart, gets along with everybody, always in a good mood. And this young lady's in line to come in and she's carrying a bottle of water. Well, that district had a rule, no bottles of water. You can't have bottles of water from outside. You can buy them inside, you can use the fountain, because they had kids bringing alcohol in the water bottle. So they said no more outside bottles of water. It happens, right? So this young lady's coming up in the line and she's drinking her bottle of water and she gets to the line. The security officer says, okay, you got to dump your bottle, drink it, or you got to dump it. She goes, listen, I'm not feeling well today. Can I just please go in and I'll drink my water? He says, no, you can't. You know the rule. You can't bring it. Throw it out or drink it. I'll be late if I drink it. I know. Then throw it out and go. Well, she's all of a sudden, she went from this nice young lady that everybody knew, friendly with this security officer and everybody. She got very, very angry. She got very upset, very emotional. So she said, you fine, I can't have the bottle. And she threw it at the security officer and hit him in the head. Next thing you know, she's screaming and hollering. Security had to take custody of this girl and they brought her to the principal's office and they're having a conversation. What happened? This is so out of character for this young lady. When they tried to, hey, calm down, she just kept on going. And what they found out was, what they didn't know was that the young lady was being abused at home by her father. It had been going on for a long time. And she disclosed this to a friend. The friend thought she was doing the right thing, and she disclosed it to a counselor. The counselor called the police, and the night before, the police showed up at the house to investigate these allegations. Well, you can imagine the difficulty that caused at this young lady's house. And of course, she faced the ramifications of it, and now there's all kinds of problems with her father and the law enforcement and her and her mom and all that. So she comes to school and she's all wound up, this young lady. The bottle of water that she normally drank or threw away was not the problem. It was the trigger event. When the security officer said, listen, you can't have it. And she said, I don't feel good. I want to drink more. No, you can't have it. And she went off. Do you see how that works? So that was the trigger event that set her off. It wasn't about the bottle of water. So that's why sometimes we have no idea what sets people off. It can be something happening there. It can be something happening at home, something in their online life. Who knows? But there's a trigger event, the event that starts the crisis. And then how we respond to that crisis makes a big difference in how everything goes. All right, so that's the first thing I wanted to cover here is understanding, what is a crisis and what's the difference between a bad day and a crisis? Because people ask that all the time. How do you tell? Matter of fact, I posted something the other day on my social media about crisis. And somebody said, well, how do you know if they're having a bad day? How do you know in advance if it's a bad day or a crisis? Well, you don't always know that in advance. You have to understand, how does this person normally interact with the world around them? How do they interact with me? Is their behavior now out of character? If the behavior is out of character and you see that they're agitated, You might want to ask a few questions without going to action imperatives. Hey, calm down. What's your problem today? Why are you behaving like that? Because if it's a crisis, it's going to set them off. So you ask questions. Hey, you seem a little upset today. Is everything okay? That's a nice question. That's not an attacking question. It's not an order to do something. It's asking a question. And one of the themes you're going to see in this training that we talk about is that when a person is feeling an emotion, good emotion or a bad emotion, happy or sad, angry, whatever, when we're feeling an emotion as human beings and someone says that emotion to us, we have a tendency to respond to it. Boy, you sound like you're really upset today. Yeah, I am upset. I got stuff going on at home today. Okay, now there's another concept I want you to get. When we talk to people after they've been in crisis and they went off and either it went to violence or almost to violence or whatever, when we talk to them, we find out is a lot of them say they don't feel like they're being heard. No one's hearing them when they're upset. So that's why action imperatives, hey, put that down, throw that away, sit down, calm down. Action imperatives don't work when someone's agitated and they feel they're not being heard. So asking questions appropriately, trying to define, is it a crisis or a bad day? So that's our first thing we have to identify. So I'm gonna end this little get together here because there's a lot of information. As the more I think about it, there's more for us to talk about. But I want you to think about a person in crisis like a red balloon. They are a little red balloon and they're normal and the little balloon just goes along. When someone gets agitated, when someone's getting upset, that red balloon starts to expand with all the emotions and the feelings that are going on, and the balloon is expanding and expanding. And what happens when a balloon gets too much air in it? It pops, correct, right? And when it pops, that's when violence usually takes place. Our jobs as someone who's going to de-escalate someone, if we have to, we have no choice, is to vent some of that air out of there so that red balloon goes back down to the point that it's manageable. See, because when we're in crisis, when we're that upset, even a little crisis like a fight with a significant other, don't they have a tendency to get out of control sometimes? You get defensive. We use words as weapons. We fight back, and everyone's upset. Next, people are screaming, hollering, crying. There's all kinds of things going on. That's a mini crisis, but it's the same exact effect. You can't think clearly when you're in crisis. That's why action imperatives don't work. You have to do different things. So our first understanding here is the red balloon. We start to see it happening. We have to decipher, is this a bad day? Is this a crisis? We have to look for the trigger event, ask questions appropriately to determine bad day, crisis, and then we go from there. All right. So I want to thank you for being here for episode 1 of De-Escalation. We will have more. I will set these up probably every couple of days so that we can take in the information. If you have questions, email me, Joe at pangarotraining.com. Joe at pangarotraining.com. Hey, Lieutenant, what about this? I never mind a question. That's how we learn. That's how we keep our places safe. And you can see why every employee needs to have this training, because anybody can come in contact with someone who's in crisis. All right. So we'll be back shortly. Thanks for being here.